My exposure at home, right here, had well prepared me for the world at large.
Teddy can play anything. He can play rock and roll, he can play blues, rhythm blues, rock and roll, jazz.
Teddy, from the standpoint of mentoring young musicians, of keeping the music in front of the public and advocating the music, did more for the music than anybody else in my lifetime that I know in Savannah.
Teddy is the quintessential jazz man.
Teddy is Savannah. Teddy is Savannah.
He is one that lives it. Yeah. He doesn't just play it. He is jazz.
Well, my first inspiration actually was my father. He played the harmonica and the nickname the Jew's harp. You play it, you actually, and it's very dangerous. It cuts the tongue and it cracks the teeth if you don't know what you're doing. You know, but he was my first inspiration. And then my older brother, Lonnie, played the saxophone, and that really kind of got me interested. And he was inclined to playing jazz. He'd already started making gigs, so subconsciously, before I really considered playing, then I was considering it without knowing it, like that. So my father and my brother were my inspiration.
There's a great depth and richness in a jazz musician, and they need to understand how important guys like Teddy are to this community over time, and get to know them and appreciate them.
The way that he plays that trombone, you know, I mean, he can just set your soul on fire with it. And not only on fire, but just kind of soothe you. And I mean, whatever mood you're in, he can get you out of that mood into the music.
Teddy was always serious about the music. And when I speak of the music, I speak of so-called jazz, because he decided very early that that's the avenue that he was going to go down.
Even in high school, when we were seniors, he was not only section lead in the band, but the band director made him student director, you know, to kind of conduct the situation if he had to leave for any particular reason. So here again, leadership is what we're talking about.
We were in the Beach High band together, and Teddy was already playing jazz in clubs with men much older than he, but because of his talent. And then, of course, he went away, and in the 60s, jazz sort of died in Savannah.
So I grew up experiencing a lot of jazz venues, a lot of jazz musicians, both locally, regionally, and national musicians. And that's what I remembered about Savannah while I was away. That, you know, I was proud of Savannah. And upon returning almost 20 years later, I found that the scene had changed drastically. And the puzzling part about it was most of the musicians were still here, but the music scene had diminished.
And what many people don't realize, when Teddy came back from the service, jazz was dead in Savannah. Stone dead.
And I decided then, well, look now, from what I remember, and since this is responsible for my development and my being a part of jazz, I got to do something about my hometown. So it was a mission for me, a dedicated mission to try and revitalize the music here in Savannah.
And he got with the Telfair Jazz Society, Ben Tucker, and some others, Huxley Scott, along the way, and they brought it back.
He's able to bring his own personality, character traits, his essence, his way of thinking to that music, you know, which is what really, in my opinion, what that music is about. I mean, you have a foundation that you work from, and then you're able to tell your story. And he's a master storyteller.
His compositions are dealing with people in the family or close friends, and so Kith and Kin is the name of that album is based on a lot of songs he's written about his family and close friends and loved ones.
He's just like a father figure for me, like as far as playing the instrument and personally. Like when I heard him, I was like, oh man, this is what I want to do, you know. And then he kind of showed me the history of the trombone and the guys who played, you know, JJ and Curtis Fuller. He was introducing me to all these guys that he was influenced by. So it's just a big inspiration.
In the Adams family, family is very important. And I think you see that carryover in his children.
Some of his best pieces, I think, and even for him personally, is about family members, right? So there's one for my mom, his wife. There's one for each of his children. There's one for the grandkids. There's one for all the women in the family.
The first true composition or serious composition that I wrote was written for Tasha, and it's entitled Her Eyes. She was born in Tokyo, Japan. And the day that she was born, there were 11 babies in the nursery. And when I got to the hospital and asked my wife, was it a boy or a girl, because we hadn't found out the sex, she told me it was a Puying in Thai, that means girl. Pu Chai is boy. So then the nurse took me to the nursery to see what I had made. And I'm looking through the window. There are 11 babies in the nursery. And she's going from baby to baby, checking the name tags to make sure she got the right baby. Out of the 11 babies, there was one brown baby. So I tapped on the window and said, I'm sure it's that one over there. She picked her up, I looked at the name tag and brought her to the window. And the first thing I noticed was her eyes. She was all eyes. She still has big eyes, you know, small body. And when I walked away from the hospital that day, I didn't have a melody or anything in mind, but I knew then that I was going to write about that experience. And so my first serious composition, composition of substance, was called Her Eyes. And I still play that, and I've recorded it twice.
Her eyes illuminate me, so bright and so wide. Oh, they mystify me.
And through the music and through the words, I get a really strong sense of what he was feeling. So it's pretty powerful every freaking time.
I'm still learning, and I learned a lot after I left, but I was well prepared competitively and musically for the jazz world when I left Savannah, and I really appreciate that now more than I did then, but I've always been aware that Savannah is the reason for my being.
After having traveled all over the world, he chose to return home. Oh, definitely. We're better off because of that.
Teddy's a living legend here in Savannah.
He's so modest, and when you say scholar, he's a doctor, he's a PhD, and people don't know that, right? So the certificate is literally in a little corner in the attic. It's the craziest thing, right? He doesn't ask to be referred to as Dr. Adams. I don't even think people in our family know that he's PhD, right? He's just dad. He's just Teddy Adams, you know.
Through fundraising, through organizing, all those things that it takes to have an institution that's jazz. Without Teddy, you know, that stuff wouldn't take place, and it's the way that he interacts with other people that give it the rich dynamic that we have in this city.
He's a lecturer, he is an arranger, a composer. He and Randall Reese put together the Savannah Jazz Orchestra. He put together, with some help, the Savannah Jazz Hall of Fame. So he's just a pioneer and organizer, a builder.
The legacy. Teddy Adams School of Music.
Tenacity, his sheer commitment to the music beyond all. I think that no one that I know has that kind of steadiness that Teddy possesses.
There's no one in Savannah, living or past, who has put in more of his own time and passion and energy and efforts for the cause of jazz and for the cause of keeping jazz going than Teddy.
It really would be jazz as a verb, because that's what he is. He's the verb.
And Teddy is the kind of person, like I told you, he's quintessential. When he pulls out his trombone, he ain't come to play. He came to blow.